And so I got in touch with her, but there was something that bothered me a little bit, and that something was the fact that if you have transgenes and you understand all the implications, there's a way to get at what's going on. There's actually a genetic way to assess some of these claims. And I asked her if she had considered that. And we just started to talk a little bit more about how you might do that. And it kind of grew from there. So it was a phenomenally interesting book. And kind of just a lucky happenstance. But anyway,
the author...
Well, I really appreciate that, Tyler. I think there's still some mistakes in it. I wish you had proofread it for me.
It was the stuff that you talked about with the biological sciences was very timely, and it just was very intriguing. So I thought, you're half a step away from some really important techniques that might be able to nail some of these things down definitively. And that was why I started to search and finally found your website and began to pester you with emails. So,
okay, maybe we can talk about that a little bit. What are some of those things that help nail it down?
Well, one of the things that would be interesting is if you had a transgenic being. It sounds kind of funny. I work with those all the time in the lab, and they're mice, and we have engineered them to express Alzheimer's disease genes. And they go on to develop some of the signs and symptoms of Alzheimer's. But when they're created, the transgenes the genes are put in randomly in basically the mouse ovum, which is then reimplanted. When they come out, we don't know who's who. And it's actually a simple matter to go ahead and probe for the gene because we know the sequences. And so then we can identify the right mice just with a little tail slice, and we're off to the races. Quite frankly, you couldn't test them all. There's so much labor involved. You've really got to know which one is which. And so when you have the genetic technology, it's very powerful. You can find that one gene out of the thousands in the mouse that makes it magic. Right. And that's routine, absolutely routine.
And this applies to the alien situation in what way? Spell it out.
In fact, if you had a human-alien hybrid, you would be able to, in my opinion, if you got some samples from that entity, go ahead and have a look and see what genes are in that guy and how do they match up with the human condition. You could do that by the markers that we use, for example, in forensic exams, or if you were really determined, maybe actually get the DNA-based sequences, perhaps of large regions. It would depend on how much sample you had. But some of the protocols, if you watch some of the crime shows on TV, touch PCR, a fingerprint, lipstick on a glass, sufficient DNA there to actually start characterizations. A little bit of hair, if the person, the hybrid, scratches themselves, that little skin that falls off could do it. You could start to analyze. And, reading some of the books, actually, Carol recommended one to me, Dark White by Jim Schnabel. It does indeed sound like there are many times when samples could be had. And either exudates, secretions, whatnot, have been around, but in the past we haven't had these tools. But in the last 10 years or so, we've got the whole genomic sequence of the human being. And we've got these powerful touch PCR protocols. Just all kinds of ways you could go after that. Pregnancy is one of the most interesting ones because, I can't remember the exact date, but within the last 15 years, scientists have made the remarkable discovery that cells from the baby actually stay in mom alive for decades after the pregnancy is over. And some of these claims about induced pregnancies and termination and whatnot, well, if we could examine some of the women, we might be able to say, oh, my Lord, there's a strange cell here.
So where the heck were you 20 years ago when I was doing an Ontario abduction case where the woman lost her baby. If we could just go back in time.
Well, can you locate her today? Because
probably not.
If possible, the cells may live on for decades. They actually may live on for decades, and it does not have to go to term. This applies to terminated pregnancies. It's kind of funny when you go back and look at the data. The original discoveries, the way this came to light is that they were doing some testing on women, and they realized that some of them showed up with these cells, and they claimed they had never been pregnant. When they went back and really carefully parsed the histories, some had had abortions. And my God, those cells are still there. I mean, it's fantastic, phenomenal.
Really? I have a question for Carol. Carol, do you think that the abduction researchers would be open to this sort of information, or what's your feeling on that?
Oh, I think they would love to have that, but I will tell you right now what they will say is that's all very well and good, but the aliens have a way of overriding all of our impulses, our instincts. They control telepathically what these women will be able to do when they come back and what they'll be able to bring back with them, which means nothing.
So whether that's true or not, it closes the loop.
Yeah, well.
It means, okay, well, you can't do that. That won't work.
Yes.
Well, got to be careful with that argument, though.
Yeah, but these were the type of excuses that we've had all along, wasn't it?
Oh, yeah.
You'll still get that.
I don't doubt that at all. But if you want to sort of do recursion back on that, then you'd say, well, hey, what's the deal with the screen memories? And how come they're permeable sometimes? And how can some people recall without prompting? You can kind of wipe yourself out of your position of any knowledge if you get too radical about what they won't allow. I think we have to start with the supposition that this is an interesting phenomenon. Okay, I don't deny the phenomenon. I do have grave questions about some of the hypotheses and explanations. But if you get back and if they were infinitely capable, we'd have no idea. Those blocks would be perfect.
Exactly.
That capacity to interfere would be, absolutely ironclad. And they would have wiped out David Jacobs decades ago.
Yep. Well, the problem is that, back, from the time that I sort of been involved in this field, I always found people had an excuse for every circumstance. When you give them the opportunity to come up with some kind of result, they will always come up and say, well, the aliens took it, the government is going to come and kill me, or, some kind of ridiculous excuse. Towards the early 90s, I was starting to get really fed up with a lot of the stuff, and I thought to myself, if we put together some good people that have the same sort of approach and ideas, we may be able to get possibly somewhere. And I put a call out to every group and every individual that I can come across Canada, from every province, and we managed to put together, actually from coast to coast, a number of groups and individuals to come together and work sort of under one heading and under the same auspices of ideas. And we managed to pull out some reasonable information. And at the same time, during the days when I used to approach people like Bud and Dr. Jacobs and numerous other individuals that were involved in the abduction phenomenon, and when they used to tell us that they had, implants and different other types of material, we offer them the opportunity to send them up here, and we will get all the technical work done through our local universities. And we did that.
Which Tom had access to at that time.
Yeah.
And it's probably worth mentioning that Tom's worked with over 100 abductions at this point.
Yeah. So we did get a lot of, implants and all kinds of strange little items. And over the years, we have done a lot of analysis on those type of things. Unfortunately, we couldn't get the big shots to give us any of that. Bud, I think a few times when I met him here and offered them those kind of solutions, he would tell me that he wasn't too interested in doing it because, in case the objects might get lost or disappear or, somebody steal it or whatever. So there was always some reason not.
But now, mostly you guys were just finding that these implants they were just, normal objects that have been buried under the skin and stuff like that.
Well, I would say a good majority are mundane things, like, pieces of metals and things that, we get in our bodies in many different ways. There was the odd type that seemed a little bit unusual, but there wasn't anything that you could say was, some kind of device, possibly, that, would be a communicative type device. I tend to also think that if these fellows are, ahead of us by however long, we probably wouldn't have any clue as to what kind of device they may be using or what type of technique they might be using. So, our way of thinking is to, we're probably looking for something electronic or something, that we would understand. But, that would be pretty. It
doesn't mean there's not a phenomena happening. There's absolutely something happening.
No doubt that the individuals, that are going through these experiences are having something, some kind of experience. Now, we tend to pigeonhole a lot of things, and I think that's part of our problem with this whole, phenomena, anything in the paranormal type phenomena. We pigeonholed, we called it names, we call, everything, it's an alien, it's a gray, it's a blue, it's a white, or whatever. We can't really pigeonhole because we don't know. Most of these answers that we're seeking, we don't have them. And when when Dr. Jacobs comes out and says, they're hybrids, well, what proof do we have?
No, it's those declarations of this is what we know and this is what we're told. This is what we. The evidence has been amassing for years is one of their favorite statements on the podium at lectures. And based on what?
Exactly.
It's testimony. It always comes back to testimony.
Witness testimony.
Yes.
Right. So you've been witness to this on literally on the inside for years.
Yes.
And I mean, you've seen all the supposed evidence.
Yes, let me say this, though, first, that I think that the work that I saw Bud do initially impressed me a great deal in terms of it being a kind, caring, supportive person who would not laugh at the experiencer, who would listen, nod, and ask intelligent questions. And people who came in feeling traumatized often left feeling better. I don't dismiss that value of the good listener at all, because I think probably both of them, but especially Bud, is really good at being an empathetic person.
Yeah, I don't think we should question Bud's compassion.
No.
Because I think that exists. It's there. It's in his interview. It's in his voice. It's in the way he treats people.
Right.
But if we were going to question anything within the technique of hypnosis, as it were, what would we question?